we're going to focus on an organization that you may not have heard as much about as you would like, and that is the Guardian Ad Litem organization. We have the volunteer coordinator here and the volunteer. We'll be back to introduce our guest in a moment. Stay where you are. We'll be right back. Straight ahead. Michelle Johnson from Guardian Ad Litem, volunteer coordinator, and Bob Wright, who's a volunteer. All my guests. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you for having us.
I am indeed glad that you've come to share some information with us on this organization that I can appreciate that it's here and it's functioning and functioning as effectively as it is. Michelle, I understand you've been with the organization a while now, and your principal job is to recruit volunteers.
Absolutely.
First of all, tell me, what is the organization? What does it do?
The Guardian Ad Litem program is through the court system. So when children come into child protection through their families, having or working case plans for abuse and neglect, the children need to be represented in the court process. And our guardian ad litems, and guardian ad litem means guardian for the case or for the court case. So it is just a guardian who works with the child when the family is going through the court process. So this is not somebody who the child lives with or has any other responsibilities to, but just in terms of the court case.
And you here tell our viewing audience that you need volunteers.
We need lots of them.
Well, tell me, who can be a volunteer?
We have very few requirements about that. Really, you need to be 21. You can be up to 81 or older, depending upon your health. The main thing is that you have experience with children, a passion for the work that is very difficult, sometimes done. The main kind of requirement is also that you have a basic background check done to make sure that that you're safe to be around children who've already been abused and neglected and are vulnerable.
Tell me, how these people selected, and if they're trained, what kind of training do they get?
Sure. It's really a self-selection process, so we really encourage everybody who thinks they're eligible to apply. And at that point, what really happens is an application. They would fill out an application that we would send them. And after that point, it's really about coming in for an interview. In the interview is a time when we both ask them more questions about what they know about a guardian, what their kind of beliefs are around child protection and those kinds of issues, what their experience are with children. And they also get a sense of whether it's a good match for them. And really, it's about a conversation, as we see it, between the prospective volunteer and one of our volunteers, who's usually the person who interviews them, to see if it's a good match for the program. Very few people are turned down once they're in the process, because we think most of the people who step forward really have a heart for this and a good idea that it is a good match for them.
Now, you mentioned a match. Let's talk about that for a moment. What does the population of the kids who need a guardian look like?
Most of the children in Twin Cities, and we're recruiting both for Hennepin and Ramsey program, they're mostly children of color. Over 50% of them are children of color. Over 1/3 of them, 37%, are African American specifically. We have a Native population as well. The Native population in Hennepin County is served by paid guardians, so we don't have right now for the Native community for volunteering. We're seeing more Somali and Ethiopian and Hmong and Spanish-speaking, from Spanish-speaking communities, those children coming in who need guardians as well, who might also need that second language.
Does it matter? Do you attempt to put an African American guardian with an African American child or Somalian? Does that kind of matching make a difference?
Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We're really looking more at the strengths of guardian. If a child has maybe educational needs or has a history of abuse or maybe sexual abuse or some other issues, we're looking for a guardian who's comfortable on those cases as well. So it is not always necessarily a racial or an ethnic match, but the point is that if we have people of color and the children are of color, that's just a good thing all around, that there's a diverse population of guardians. And historically it has not been. So that's a part of why I was hired and why my job is to change the complexion of our program.
Let me ask the obvious questions. Do you have serious difficulty recruiting guardians of color?
I don't think as serious as a lot of people would assume. I think that we as a population have more jobs, and I think that one of the main requirements is that you have to be able to get out to go to court every 2 to 3 months during the day. So I think that's one of the main barriers for a lot of people of color, saying, I want to do this, I want to help my community, but I can't get the time away from my job, and that's not something we really can get around. And the thing that had been harder that we're trying to work with is that a lot of people are available during the day, but sometimes the trainings haven't been as flexible. So we're now trying some weekend and evening options for trainings for people who do work during the day, so that the interest doesn't stop with the interest, but people can actually go through the program by starting to look at some of the barriers that we might have corrected ourselves in the program that we can fix to make sure that everybody who really wants to do this can.
Now, assuming that you do have some Caucasian kids in the program, do you have the same problem recruiting Caucasian guardians?
Not historically. Generally, our population of guardians, we have about 270 right now guardians, and about 25 of them are African American. So the rest of them are European American, and a very small number are other people of other ethnicities. Now that's starting to change, but we really aren't representing proportionally the kids in care to our guardian population, and that's one of our goals. But I also have to always say, European American guardians from the suburbs or wherever they're from, they have a wonderful heart. Cultural competency in many cases is still there. So we don't want to encourage people who don't look like our children of color into the system, but we also have to acknowledge that we want more of them. And some of our program is about trying to encourage communities that are going places where we haven't been before. Like Juneteenth, where I met Bob last year. We try to get out into community events to talk about our children.
You mentioned you provide training as well. Let's talk about the training a little bit. How long is the training and what's involved in the training?
The state requires 40 hours, and it's
40
either
hours.
spread 40 hours. And it's really important because most people, not lawyers or social workers, and even if they are lawyers or social workers, they're wearing a different now as a guardian, so they're coming to the work differently. We want them to know rules and procedures, how to operate in a court setting, how to work with social workers, the lawyers, therapists, attorneys, and judges, how to do an oral report, or in many cases a written report if you have to testify in court. So really to prepare for the job that's ahead, that's representing children in a court proceeding. And so it's 40 hours, and we have either a day training that has 9 sessions, evening training that is 12 sessions because it's a shorter period of time in the evening. Now we're looking at weekend sessions that are either 11 or 12 sessions, which include Saturdays and later evening times.
How many hours are there in each session?
It depends upon whether day or evening, either low end 3 hours, all the way up to our 9 to 3:30 session, which is the day session for our classes.
Okay, so we have day sessions and evening sessions, and you're looking at weekend.
Right, we're in June starting our first weekend evening session, so Saturdays and then Tuesdays and Thursday evenings starting at 5:30.
And so each session is 3 hours long,
The day.
and they must put in 40 hours before they become a graduate.
Yes, and you're sworn in by a judge because this is it's oath. So you are representing the children in this process. So you're sworn in, and it's a very nice ceremony.
And so you are a volunteer, so you shouldn't expect to be paid for anything.
No, it's a reimbursement for parking and for mileage. Yes.
Mileage reimbursement and parking space.
Fees.
And you can volunteer if you are 21, between 21 and 100.
That's right.
If you're healthy.
If you're healthy.
I suppose that at some point, your attitude is
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we ask a lot of questions because what we really want is people to be able to come into the system of the courts with an open mind about our families. Because the families are here, they've got some serious problems in most cases, and it's really about trying to advocate for the child and represent the child while acknowledging that family system. The birth parents still have rights, should have rights, have a chance to fix whatever the concerns are, and to get their children back if they're already in foster care, or to have case closed if they're not. And over 70% of our children do go home.